Yes. Hello, Jenna. My name is Sister Jeannette Buehler. I've been in the community now for 60 years, and it's been a great experience. I'm
Awesome.
currently retired, more or less. There are still lots of things I keep involved in, but technically speaking, I fall under the classification of retired.
Um, so in talking with women who might be interested in religious life, they're always curious about the vows. So of the vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience, which vow is the hardest to live out for you?
To be real honest, each one has some hard places, just as each one has some easy places. So I don't really want to put them in any type of an order as such, because they do kind of flow together. Um, One example, I used to give Enneagram workshops, and one of them was to an international group of formation personnel. And I always remember a young sister who came up to me during one of the breaks, and she had been back in her village, and she asked the chief in that village what he thought about her as religious and how she lived the vow of poverty. And he looked at her and he said, "Oh, sister, you have no family." Now, I never thought about that as a vow of poverty, but given the role of families and the place of families in her particular culture, he saw that as a poverty. And that has settled with me kind of deeply to realize that's something that as religious, we don't have our own family. So that we've got our blood family, but there are times I know when, like at Christmas time or things like that, and we're gathering, I don't have any children to bring to that celebration. And there is a certain emptiness or loneliness sometimes. You're a member of that family, and yet my life is so different from what theirs is, and I don't have the same thing to share with them. And so that becomes something you have to realistically look at, that whole row of relationships when you're looking at religious life. It can be a blessing because there are many rewards in terms of not having an exclusive relationship. Gives you a certain freedom to come and go that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And you make lots of friends, and you're on various different levels too, within the community, but also within your ministry. So both there's good points and there's hard points in it. Obedience, in some ways, I also thought, well, that's not the hardest one. But when I look at it realistically, and I think back on my life, at times where I remember we used to call them obediences. It was a little slip of paper we'd get that told us where we were going to go for a year or what, however. I remember one of them, I cried when I opened it. They were asking me to do a job that I didn't really feel I was qualified to do, that I really didn't want to do. And I was leaving a ministry that I really liked. And I remember going to the superior and saying, I really don't think this is for me. And when I opened that little slip, that's exactly where I was going. And she said, well, just try it for a year. 9 years later, I finally was permitted, more or less. I was assigned to something else. And they were blessed years, really. I can't complain about all that happened to me during that time. But it was that sense of going where you'd rather not go. Now we have a lot more freedom and flexibility in our ministries in this day and age. It's doubtful that anything like that would really happen. But nevertheless, there are still times when you go to someone else and you ask them, listen to me, this is where I feel God might be calling. Do you have any insights? What do you think about it? And then each year we receive a form called a commissioning form. We let our religious superiors say, this is where I think I'm calling, and they kind of give a blessing to what we have discerned. They can raise questions for us, but really the word obedience means to listen. And so that vow of obedience calls us to listen, not just to what we think God's calling us to, but what can others also help us to know about God's call. Okay.
That's a great explanation. Thank you.